Hello, product people. Welcome to the Product for Product podcast, hosted by Matt Green, data advocate and product manager, and Masha Mikanovsky, product leader and author. Our goal is to serve the product community by helping you find products that can help make your work in product management easier. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Product for Product podcast.
Welcome back. On today's episode, Michelle and I are pleased to welcome back Tracy Larango. Tracy is a CRO strategist, user researcher, and fellow podcaster. We'll be discussing how to conduct better usability testing, as Tracy has experience on both sides of the process. So let's dive in. How are you, Tracy?
Hello. I've definitely been better. I'm pretty sick. You could probably hear from my voice, but I'm just really happy to be back. So thanks, guys, for having me back on the show.
Happy to have you. Thanks for joining us. Hey Michelle.
Hey Matt, hey Tracy, really nice having you. And if you wouldn't have told me that you were sick, I wouldn't have known. So
right,
please don't worry about it.
Thanks so much for making it possible to be here. It's great having you back.
Yeah.
Shiva and I, so Shiva Manjunath, who was also on your podcast recently,
yes.
He and I have a podcast of our own, and I have just been doing my absolute best to crank out episodes, and I sound absolutely horrible, but we try to make light of it. So hopefully we can do the same today.
That's right. Let's do it.
Thank you for coming on the show again. And, we're all humans, so sometimes we don't feel 100%.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to yawn through this episode today. So, Matt, if you want, you can cut it out or just leave it in there.
It's natural. It's good at sound effects. It's natural. So we're all just humans.
I'll try not to put anyone to sleep on this episode.
and from hearing your episode so far, Tracy, I think that, I don't know, I'm catching on your banter with your co-host. So
yeah. I mean, like a good 5 minutes of each episode is just us either arguing with each other, making fun of each other, or just, I don't know, crying about something totally inconsequential.
Yeah. And go ahead and plug your podcast. Give the name out and everything.
Yeah. So our podcast is called From A to B. It is mostly about experimentation and testing and optimization. We just really try to touch upon a lot of polarizing topics that we don't think a lot of people are talking about in the space. And we also try to elevate people who don't get a lot of airtime in general. And it's been great. It's been a lot of fun. Our moms love it. So we're doing our job.
That's it.
It passed the mom test. So that's good.
It did. It passed the mom test.
Awesome. So we brought you today, Tracy, to talk about user testing tools, but as Matt mentioned in the introduction, not just from a tester perspective, but not just from a company that want to test their own new product, but also from a person that tests it.
Yes.
So tell us about this a bit. How did you get to do both?
Absolutely. So I first started off with user testing as the person developing the user tests. This was at a startup called Willful. They were a technology that creates or that helps people create their wills and do their planning for the afterlife, I guess. So it was a great experience doing user tests there. And then I also carried some of that experience over at Inkbox Tattoos, another great Toronto-based business. So did some more user testing there. And then my user testing experience kind of took a bit of a pause until recently when I decided to go on the other side of the screen and be a user tester. So that's been just kind of a fun little thing I do to supplement my income and also just learn how to be better at user testing. And I mean, I've made about $150 so far. So that's like coffee for 1 week, I guess.
That's right. That's right.
Don't call the CRA. CRA Matt is our IRS. So
gotcha.
The revenue agency.
I have no idea how to even claim that income. So I mean, $150, I think I'm in the clear at tax time, but hey, it's been fun. So yeah, I'd love to keep doing it. And I think I've picked up along the way a lot of things that I wish I did differently during test design but
Right.
then also seeing other things that those test designers do that I can say, oh, wow, this was horrible and I know not to do it next time. Or I hit a great test and I have a great test experience. And that's something that I want to emulate the next time I run a user test or design one myself.
So let's talk about this a bit, because that's what I was always saying everywhere that I worked and to other people. You always have to use your own product to learn how users are actually experiencing it.
Yes.
Now, not every product it's easy to do. Some products has nothing to do with what the software developer has to do. So as a software developer, if I developed in the past integration between product lifecycle management systems to CAD systems, I was not a CAD designer. I was not an engineer developing some, assemblies, and I didn't manage those assemblies. So I had really no space to use that, which was hard, right? But if you are a developer working on, I don't know, let's say Apple, and then you use the Apple, then it's very easy for you to use your own product.
Yeah.
So this is where it's a really cool thing that you're able to do. Maybe those are not your products, but still, you use the persona of the audience of the tests to learn how to be a better user tester, right?
Totally. Yeah, I think that's a really good call out. I think also it made me think of something that I actually wasn't aware of until now, which is when I'm designing a user test, I try to put myself in the shoes of the tester. But when I'm a tester, I often catch myself wondering, like, what was going on through your mind when you designed this? Like, so, for example, there was, I don't remember if it was like Lenovo or Brother, but it was some sort of screen monitor app to help change settings on your new monitor. And I was doing a user test for that. And some of the things that they were building into this app, I was just like, first of all, who needs this? Why did you build this? I was just like, how much time was wasted on this feature that you're building? And how much are you wasting paying out testers to test this? It's just, it's you take for granted when you're building a test and you're building features, like who actually needs or wants this?
Yeah,
I'm thinking from a product manager's perspective, that's might be really valuable. I think I need to look into this.
It's absolutely very valuable. But I what you're saying actually puts you as a non-typical tester. I don't think every tester will think like that.
Yeah, it's almost kind of a double-edged sword coming into a user test, already having the experience of being on the other side of it. I almost overthink it sometimes. I'm almost hypercritical at times, and I try not to give too much like specialist expertise. But also at the same time, I am one individual. Just because there's something that doesn't resonate for me, it doesn't mean that it doesn't resonate for anyone. I'm just going to give my honest feedback as I see it.
And you might have not been their targeted
Absolutely.
persona. But we can talk about that in a second, because it's just I thought about something that happened to me in the past when I was writing my book. And here,
great book, by the way.
Yes, thank you.
Loved it.
The Resurrector. Yes, you did read it.
I rated it on Goodreads, everything. Oh yeah, it was a good one.
Awesome. So I didn't plug it in the episodes for a while, so maybe it's time to do that.
It's time.
Thank you, Matt, for allowing me to do it. But I took classes at U of T for creative writing, and I told some people I'm learning how to write better, and some people told me, but this will make you a worse writer, a worse reader, because now everything you read, you will think what went through their head when they wrote it, and you will think about the structure, how they write it. And then so I remember a good friend told me she will never do anything like that because she was not a writer, she was a reader, but she didn't want to ruin this experience of reading. So the analogy here is that you, by knowing how to develop the user tests, you have this bias almost when you do test for others about what went behind the scenes.
That's a really good comparison. I actually really like that. I think part of that, there's probably some truth to that with the user testing experience, but at the end of the day, if this is a product that I'm truly the target audience for, I really try to just take off my strategist hat and just be an honest user and say, hey, I would totally use this, or I really had a difficult time finding this, just trying to keep it as objective as possible and as honest as possible. But I can totally see why learning how to write ruins reading for you. Absolutely.
Yep.
It did. I can admit that it did. But putting that aside, so how do they when you get to they don't just choose you and they tell you, okay, test it. There is some criteria that you have to go through in order to become a tester for a specific product, right?
Yes, screening.
Screening.
So screening. Okay, so it's actually quite rare that I am accepted for a user test. So whenever I do, it is the biggest deal ever. I have to tell everyone, oh, I did a user test today. It's the reason why I've only made $150 doing this, because I swear for every 30 screeners that I do, I'll pass one.
Lots of rejections there, I guess.
I'm just totally just estimating there, but it sounds about right. It's so rare. And also, you don't get screeners all that often, especially if you don't have a very high rating on these tools. So that's why it's so important that when you, as someone who designs a test, when someone tests and does a really good job for you and gives you a lot of insight, you really want to rate that person and give them a solid rating and give them positive feedback, because the algorithm that determines how many screeners you get will naturally favor you, the user who has the higher rating. So I have a pretty high score. I'm not going to brag too hard, but I have a high score and I get more screeners because of that. But I still do not pass the majority of them because I'm not the target audience for the majority of the screeners I take. I don't make it through to online gambling ones. I don't make it through to gaming ones. There are just so many specific things that people look for that is just there is no way I fit this criteria at all. So
yeah, and each one's asking different questions each time. So totally. Okay.
Oh my gosh, it's the most specific things sometimes. Sometimes it'll be are you I'm just making this up, but it's totally within the realm of possibility. Are you a Korean speaking RV owner? So it's they're looking for a very, very specific demographic, and there is no way I am meeting the majority of those.
Okay. This definitely helps, because some of the tools we've looked at, they list we have millions, in our pool of panelists, and so I could see they need millions in order to fill out these spaces.
Yeah. And I've also noticed, though, when I'm trying to recruit for user tests, I'm always why are we not finding anyone? But it's it's because the things that we're trying to look for in a screener are so specific that the pool of people who are actually going to pass it is so small. So everyone is just trying to find their match. It just feels like dating.
That's one of the values of using those platforms, because trying to do it on your own is impossible sometimes, right? Depends on what you're looking for. I mean, if we're talking about, we talked about it in previous episodes. If it's a simple consumer product, you might be able to go to Starbucks and ask people over there. But if it is a B2B or very specialized to a specific type of users, then it's very hard to find those users sometimes.
Yes. The one screener that I was absolutely shocked that I made it through, it was a women's menstrual cycle app that it's a very specific app. And you have to be a paid premium member to make it through to the screener. And I happened to be. So I actually I was so excited. It was one of the first tests that I got through the screener on. And lo and behold, by the time I passed it, I was ready to start the test. They blocked the Figma prototype with a login. So I actually couldn't even access it. So it's just all these little barriers that actually get in the way of the user tests that are sometimes preventable and sometimes unpreventable.
Yeah. And this one, you had to be a paid member for what? For that app specifically?
Yes. So a very specific app, and you couldn't be a free member. You had to be on a paid plan.
And this was through one of the. So we have to talk today about user testing specifically and conversion crimes. I think these are the two that we're using. So this was a test through one of those platforms?
Yes. This one was done through user testing.
I see. Okay. Interesting.
Yep.
Because I would think that if you're a paid user, they can access you directly from the app and ask you if you want to participate rather than go around through user testing.
Yeah, I mean, they totally could. And I don't know why they don't. No idea. Maybe, well, you know what? Every time I go into that app, I am bombarded with notifications. I'm constantly asked, like, hey, do you want to upgrade your upgraded plan? Like, I just get hit with so many notifications that they probably have other priorities going on. But
it seems like their marketing priorities are higher than their product manager's priorities. So
surprise.
Surprise. Exactly.
But yeah, no, so that was through usertesting.com. And then conversion crimes is very small, and I have done even fewer tests through them. However, with conversion crimes, the payout is a lot larger. So I've made probably about $50 on conversion crimes doing way fewer tests, because if someone's running a test and they really like the output that you gave them or the quality of feedback that you gave them, they will contact you back to do more tests, which is something I really liked about conversion crimes. And it's also, I think, easier to get tests through there. For the tests that I've done through there, I just needed to be shopping for someone who's pregnant and test out a baby store. It's pretty easy criteria to hit instead of the, like, you have to be Korean speaking and own an RV.
Very niche. How much of a time commitment is it? And how do they communicate with you? So through the app itself, or is it all through email or something?
So based on what I've seen myself for user testing, there are two user tests. There's moderated and there's unmoderated. There are different levels of depth to the different ones. So you can be doing a $4 unmoderated test, which is going to be about 5 minutes worth of your time. And most of them are $10 unmoderated. So that's like a 10-minute commitment. It's like about $1 a minute.
Okay.
And then for the moderated test, which personally I have never been a tester on those, but those are that's where you get the big money. There are the 30-minute ones that give you about a $30 payout, and then the 60-minute ones that are a $60 payout. And this is all in US. So as a Canadian, you're like, okay, $10, that's like $13 or $14. That's amazing. So that's what I've seen. It is a very low time commitment. And especially if you're not making it through screeners, it's like, okay, I spent 10 minutes this week doing one user test and I made $10.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy, but I wish I could get into more tests.
And from the application perspective, user testing versus conversion crimes. So, which one of them seems to be like better systems, not just the how many tests they give you and how much they pay out, but also user friendliness and the ability to test specific things that maybe the other ones don't have?
User testing has been around for a lot longer than conversion crimes. So there is definitely a level of robustness that you can get on user testing that you can't necessarily get on conversion crimes. However, there have been several times in which I will get through a test. I'll be approved for a test in user testing and start the test up, and then my application will just crash. So neither is perfect, I will say. It's very frustrating when you finally get through to a test after so long, and then you have a technical issue and you can't get back to the test. It's gone forever.
Yeah.
So that is definitely a frustration you can encounter when you're a tester, I will definitely say. But I find it easier to use the mobile versions of these apps versus the desktop ones. I always have desktop issues for whatever reason, but weirdly enough, those are the ones that I always end up passing the screening to get through. So
interesting.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. It is definitely a mixed bag with these different options.
So in my comments for this show, I'm writing technical tips to would-be testers.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Use mobile application.
We got the insider.
Yes. Yeah. Like it's such a mess. If you follow the Reddit threads for user testing, especially, people just share the most frustrating stories about using these tools.
This might be a good place for
Very interesting.
for product teams and design teams to go research,
Absolutely, and I'm sure they do, but those systems are quite complex, and I'm sure that they also bring those tests that they have to do from different places. So it's probably not that simple for them to get everything, all their ducks in a row regarding the technical aspects of this, which is a shame. I mean, you want wanting to have a good quality and not to have those crashes in the middle or stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. So like you're linking your application up with user testing
applications.
Application?
Probably Figma or other
is the middleware is like
with them, like we learned in previous episodes.
Yeah, so you definitely could have some technical difficulties there. That's got to be frustrating on both ends.
So the next thing I wanted to learn from you, and you mentioned it a bit earlier in the podcast, in the episode, was about things you learned as a tester.
Yes.
What would you do, or what would be the things that would you do in the future different, because now you have that empathy to the users?
Yeah, totally. So there are a few things that stand out. I think the big thing is to remember when you're designing either a user test or a screener question, don't try to pack as many questions as possible into what is supposed to be a short test. Oftentimes, you'll get approved for a $10 test, and while it's a test that should take 10 minutes, it ends up taking 20 plus, because this is a business that wants to run it like it's a 30-minute moderated test. They want to ask you a million questions. They want to give you pretty complex tasks. Just don't do that to your testers. It's not fair, because once we start a test, we really can't back out of it. So I guess don't take advantage of your users by asking them more than you should. That also applies to the screener questions. Do not ask a million screener questions. And also, if you're going to ask screener questions, if you're looking for a very specific thing, just ask that first. Don't make your potential user answer all these questions and then at the very end ask them, do you own an RV? It's like, you could have asked me that first. Yes, and then kind of in that same realm, don't ask questions that include data that's gathered in the user's profile. Like, you don't need to ask me my language. Like that's in my profile. You know what languages I speak. So just very redundant questions and overdoing it with steps and questions, having really reasonable expectations of your users. Don't be shady and disguise very complex tasks for $10 or $4 moderated tests. One thing that I see,
you think they do it because it costs them money, so they want to squeeze as much as possible in that?
Yes, that is 100% what it is. And when that happens to me, I wonder if I ever did that in the past on the other side of the screen when I was building the test. I don't think I did, but sometimes I wonder, I'm like, did I?
Like unintentionally hold someone's attention hostage in some way.
Yes.
Like, I have you here. I'm going to use you as long as I can.
As much as I can.
Yes.
I paid for this.
I paid. Yeah.
But it's true for every test that you do with users that sometimes, if you are asking too many things, then there could be a bias there by having those users biased by some of the things they already answered, and then you go to another area. And I've seen, I'm by no means expert on user research, but I've seen some talks in the past about how many or how many things you can ask that is actually valid versus making it invalid, your test. So there is that perspective that Tracy mentioned, which is like abusing the testers.
Yes.
Plus also that other aspect of, is this not actually ruining your test in the first place? So why even invest in that?
Yeah, that's why I was wondering if there was some sort of framework or some sort of template. I know you're going to ask like questions that are very specific to your product, but I wondered if there was some like, hey, these are best practices.
I would even take your question farther to ask, are those platforms helping the person that made the test to make a better test so they don't waste time and money?
Brilliant.
Or maybe they don't, because they're like, oh yeah, we'll just get their test and it doesn't really matter.
That's right.
Honestly, okay, I will speak for user testing, my experiences on user testing. I find that they're actually quite good when a tester disputes, for example, a low rating that really wasn't deserved, or if I enter a test and it actually, like, for example, the Figma is not actually accessible to me to view, they'll compensate you for your time. It'll usually be like a partial compensation, but yeah, I found that they're actually quite good and are on the side of the tester in many instances, at least just from my experience. But yeah, like, it is really important to make sure that you're just running realistic tests. And also, like, for example, sometimes I see user tests for luxury goods, and it's like, okay, so your target is a millionaire, but like, if I were a millionaire, why would I be hustling for like $10 user tests on usertesting.com? So it's just sometimes there's just a disconnect that you see.
That's good to hear that they're thinking about their users, because you're the value proposition that they're offering to their customers. Like, hey, we have a large pool of participants and we want to make sure they're happy, because if you get bad ratings, they get bad ratings, and then they're not successful. And so that's great to hear that.
And there's so many platforms out there for user tests that it's like, if I just keep having bad experiences on usertesting.com, I'm just going to go somewhere else.
Right. Yeah, we noticed that it's a very competitive market they're in.
Yes.
This is a type of a marketplace, but those platforms are actually the agencies in the middle, because without them, you can't really make that connection between the two parties.
Yes.
But that makes it a bit interesting model there, because who do they need to make happy? Do they need the customers to be happy, or they need the testers to be happy?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Serving both sides, right?
Yes, I mean, well, they're paying out the testers, so maybe the testers should not complain too much because they're getting paid. But it's good to hear what you said, that they're actually also taking care of the testers, because the testers they need the testers.
Yeah. So if you don't have testers, then who's gonna
be
running user tests?
Yeah, and I think a couple of products maybe even look back. They don't actually have participants. I know a couple of them didn't offer that.
All of them will have the panels, so you have to bring your own. Exactly.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I think I've used one tool similar to that. I forget what it was called, but definitely an interesting experience from what I remember using that.
Yeah. So they don't even mess with it. They're like, well.
Yeah. It's a lot more work. Like, recruitment is such a pain in the butt if you're doing it yourself.
Right.
Like, it's takes so long and it's so expensive. Just I don't want to do that again.
So that was really cool learning today from you, Tracy. Thank you so much again for coming to the show. I think that you gave us really a very different point of view to this series in general, to any of the episodes we had until now, I think, because we always talked about, one type of users, mostly the users of the application. But here there are two types of users, and now we got to hear from someone that have done both of them. So very much appreciate this.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for having me back on. It's always a joy to be on the call with you guys. And thank you for putting up with my nasal congestion. And
don't worry about it. By the time this episode is released, you will feel all like new.
100%.
I really hope so.
Yes, I'm sure.
So yeah, thanks so much.
Yep.
So where can people reach out to you?
Yeah, you can reach out to me. I guess the best place is LinkedIn, just Tracy Larango. Find me there. And you can also find me on From A to B. It's here. It's a cool podcast. I host it with Shiva Manjunath. So you should definitely check that out as well.
Yeah, Shiva and Tracy are great on that podcast. So
Thank you.
please do yourself a favor, especially if you are into experimentation, and do go and listen to it.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you to all the listeners, and we'll talk to you later.
Absolutely.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you to all the listeners. We really appreciate the feedback and support. Please leave us a review to help others find the show on Apple or Spotify or anywhere else you're listening to the show.